20-something me thought he knew everything. And things he didn't know was very quick to spout off bullshit to sound like he knew it. Had zero humility or humbleness, and an early 20-something me didn't know when he was in over his head, and had no self-awareness around when he wasn't actually performing to his capabilities. 40-something me knows that it doesn't matter how good I am at the current job I'm doing, how much my coworkers like me, how much praise I get from my CEO, how much other companies come and try to headhunt me. I've turned down like 5 job offers from Amazon game studios in like the last like year. None of that matters because I'm only as good as I know what I don't know. And there is a lot that I don't know that I don't know I don't know.
Jay ECKERT, welcome to the show.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good.
Living the dream out there in Vegas?
Yeah, I guess. People often ask me, living in Vegas must be great. I'm like, I live in suburbia out here. I only go to the Strip if friends are visiting. And I do about 2 weeks a month here, 1 week in LA, and then back and forth. So I still go to LA all the time. And I tell them this is like living in an extension of Orange County. Like I'm in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac in like the far west side of the city in an area called Summerlin. And so it's like, I'm not like living some crazy Vegas life. This is my quiet introvert life. And then when I want the extrovert life, I go to LA. So where all my friends are. Yeah.
Well, dude, you've done a lot over the last, was it been like 8 years since, no, maybe almost 10 years since we met. I mean,
Sounds about right. Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think we met when you were still working with EA, and then you've done just
if I was still at EA, it would have been 2012 or earlier. So yeah.
Yep, it was 2012, and then you've done literally everything since. It seems like. So run through some of the things
for a long time there. EA was the interesting part of my life. Now it's the footnote.
Yeah, you were there for a while, right?
So it depends how you count it. They acquired a company that I was at. If you do it by normal corporate standards and include the company I was at, I was there from early 06 to mid 12. If you don't count the time at the startup, then I was there from early 08 to 12.
Okay. Now, what was the company that got acquired?
It was called Supercomputer International, which name means nothing, SCI. We made a product called PlayLink. Excuse me. I had COVID 3 times, and the 3rd time I got the bonus gift of I now have asthma. That's just a thing I have now. I don't like it. It's a cough variant asthma, they call it. So I only cough. I don't have any of the other problems like the burning lungs and stuff, but I just randomly can't help but cough. I hate it. Yeah, don't get COVID 3 times. And I was being careful, and I'm fully vaxxed and like boosted and everything. Anyways, sorry, digressed. I do that a lot. So SCI made a thing called PlayLink. And remember, this is 2005, 2006, when the internet was very, very different. Xfire wasn't a thing. Raptor wasn't a thing. We were still using AIM, and so was PlayLink. This is the interesting. So what PlayLink did, it was an AIM client, because that was back in the days when like people's instant messenger programs weren't walled gardens. They were all API based, right? You could make your own interfaces. Remember Trillion? Trillion was amazing. It was all in one till everyone went full walled garden. So PlayLink used AIM as a messenger and friends platform on the front end. You had friends list and you chatted with friends using AIM. The cool part was it had a database of hundreds of games, basically most games on Steam and a lot of games that weren't on Steam. Mostly Steam because that was the easiest, but lots of games that weren't. Games that used dedicated servers. Remember those? Remember when dedicated servers were a thing that still existed and game studios still did? So it had a library of dedicated servers, and we had clusters of servers in Virginia and Silicon Valley in data centers. And what I would do is I'd message a bunch of my friends, be like, hey, dude, do you want to play a game of Counter-Strike? And they'd be like, yeah. I'm like, cool. You want to do 4v4? We'll do bomb defusal, these 3 maps. Yeah. Okay. 5-minute time limit. Yeah. So then you pull up, you in the app, you would go to Counter-Strike, you would say, custom server, these parameters, 4v4, 5-minute rounds, the diffusal mode, these 4 maps, invite your friends, and it would create a little chat room with all your friends. You kind of talk about what you're going to do for the settings. You set the settings, dial them in, you hit launch. It would send a command out to the server farm. The server farm would grab an available node in the cluster and spin up a Counter-Strike server with all the settings you did, but the configs you set, launch it and run it. And then it would say, cool, it's up and running, we're ready to go. And then it would send into your group chat a little shortcode link. You click it, and that would launch the game and auto join you to the server, assuming the game support. Some games that didn't support auto join, we'd have to get more creative. But most games, you could auto join. You click the link, auto joins the server, and now you're all in the game. And you have a custom server spun up for your game, and you play your matches, and you have your fun. And in theory, it was free, and the money came other ways to the platform and stuff. And that was PlayLink. So I was their head of IT and operations for like the server, the infrastructure, the dedicated server administration, all that kind of stuff. So did that. And then EA acquired us. At the same time, it was funny because up until that point, I'd wanted to work in gaming, since I was in school. And I was 25, 26 at the time. I had kind of given up because when you're a kid in Louisville, Kentucky, who dropped out of college, you drop out of engineering school to go work at an engineering place doing like web hosting stuff. The opportunities to get into gaming are not large. So I'd given up trying, and I didn't know how to get in the game industry. I just, I had my quiet little life in Louisville. It was the college age years for me, not the college life, but the college years of just, late night doing crazy, late nights at Denny's with friends and like playing video games late at night and working during the day kind of life. And I'd given up, and I was part of a thing called LAN War. LAN War is still today the largest and longest privately run LAN party. I say privately run because technically QuakeCon counts as a LAN party and it's bigger. But LAN War is older and larger, privately speaking. In the heyday of LAN parties, when like broadband was still relatively new, everything always online wasn't a big thing, and WoW was still nascent, like 2003 to 2006.
Yep.
LAN War had 4 events a year. 3 of those events a year was, like 750 people, and 1 event a year in the summer was 2,000 people. It was a big freaking LAN party. And I was part of the network administration team that, did all that. I'm actually still part of LAN War. We just had our last event in July. We do 2 a year now, January and July. Event number 60,
how big was that?
64. Now it's like 300 people. Still a lot for a LAN party today, but it's not, not what it used to be, but it's fun, still fun. But yeah, we're at number 64 event. I think this was event 64 this past time, maybe 65. I lost count. But yeah, was doing that, and this guy comes to me and he says, "Hey, so do you remember the World Series of video games, the WSVG? It ran for like 2 years, 06, 07. So the WSVG was like, we're going to do this thing. And they partnered with LAN War, and they brought us in to run the BYOC section of this tour they were doing. And the agreement was, we will go around to all your events around the world and run the BYOC. In return, your first event of your World Series of video games, your first stop for the season is going to be in Louisville during our big summer event that we always do. Million Man LAN, MML, the big 2,000 person event. And they were like, yeah, okay, this works. So we're at that event. And this guy comes to me and goes, "Hey, I was sent over here by some of the WSVG guys. I'm looking for a dude to run server ops, server admin for my startup in Atlanta." And I was like, "Go on." And he was talking about what he was doing, PlayLink. And I'm like, "That sounds cool." So about 2 weeks later, I drive down to Atlanta, which is about a 6-hour drive from Louisville, 5.5, 6-hour drive. I meant to drive down, do the interview, and then drive back. Do the interview and drive back the next day. And I get down there, and the interview was like 20 minutes. And he was basically like, "Here's your offer." I'm like, "Oh." And it was a good offer. It was a really good offer. I quit working at the web hosting company at that time, and I changed jobs, did some tech jobs, came back, was working in, I was one of the shift managers in customer service for ASUS actually at the time. And I hated it. It was a call center job. Freaking hated it. And ASUS, their call center at the time was entirely run by metrics. It was how many people can you get off the phone and out of the queue as fast as possible? Not how many problems can you fix. They flat out said it is better to have a person call 3 times this week with the same problem until it's fixed the right way than it is to have them on the phone for over 5 minutes.
Why?
Because that is what the overlords of metrics.
Okay.
Well, I remember exactly who the man was who said that. He was the son of the CEO, and he ran the U.S. customer service stuff. Really nice guy. I've actually met him several times in the industry since, and I've run into him many times in the Bay Area when I lived there in game industry stuff, because ASUS is one of those companies where like all the execs are the same family, like they're founders family, and so they're all. It's a very I've actually run into him a lot over the years since. He's actually a really nice guy. I just, you know, when you're a grunt, working for him kind of sucks. But it's funny. He has no idea that the person he met me in like the teens of this last 10 years is the same person who worked for him 10 years before that. I know for a fact he does not know that I used to work there when I was in Louisville. And he was very, very different towards me when I was at, EA and GenVid and places. So, but anyways, yeah, I hated it. And so I'm like, go on, tell me about this. And he's telling me about PlayLink. I'm like, okay. So I go down, he gives me the interview, and it was really, yeah, here's an offer. I'm like, well, that was the easiest interview I've done in my life. And it was only like 4. And I was like, I'm gonna drive back home. So I drove back and thought about it for a couple of days. And I was like, screw it, I'm moving. And moved away from home, which was, a new thing. I'd done it once before. I moved to Chicago for a job, and I was like, never again. I always said growing up, I'll never leave Louisville for a bigger city unless it was Chicago. And then I got a job in Chicago. And then I came back from Chicago, hated the job, hated living there, hated having no friends. And I was like, never moving away for a job ever again. And then I moved to Atlanta for that job. And
Go figure.
yeah, put a pin in that. Never do that again, because this is going to become a common theme as we go through this. And so went down and worked for him for a year and a half doing that. And then we ran out of money because turns out the guy that ran the company that I spoke to was a freaking idiot. One of the worst people I've ever worked for. He is the epitome of snake oil salesman, startup guy. What we were building was amazing. What we'd actually finished building and what it still needed to do, there was a huge disconnect between what he sold to people as what it was. We ran out of money and funding. Verizon was a big major sponsor and partner of ours for a while. That didn't last terribly long. And then he basically hit this mode where he was like, we're trying to sell the company, be acquired. We're very close. We're out of money. We can't pay anyone a full salary. You don't have to work full time. But if folks can just be nearby to pop in on short notice to knock out a few things to get certain stuff working in a certain phase as needed. Like I might call and say on a Monday, hey, tomorrow, can I get 4 of you in to work on this thing so it's done by end of day for this potential acquisition? If you can be around for that over the next month, you'll all get jobs if we get acquired. If we don't have it solved in the next month, we'll shut it down. We can't pay you during this month if you do that. And he wasn't paying great money, but I was paying enough that I could bide my time for 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, this is worth it. And I'm at WSVG Toronto in 2007. About 3 weeks into that, working the event because I was still doing that. And it was sponsored by MTV. They were actually paying really well. Like I flew up to Toronto for like 4 days for the event, and they called me 3 days before the event. They said they weren't going to need me. They had enough people. They called me 3 days before the event, and they were like, "We actually need you." I'm like, "Well, it's in Canada." And this is the first year, 2007. This is the first year where you have to have a passport to go to Canada now. I don't have a passport. I've never left the country. And they were like, expedite one. I'm like, I need it in 5 days. They're like, yeah, you can get them that fast. We'll pay for it. Just do it and charge it to us. And I'm like, okay. So I paid like $900 and got a passport in 4 days that was expedited and paid for by WSVG. And they rebooked and changed my flights like 3 times. We waited for the passport to arrive. The last possible day I could leave, Wednesday afternoon, because it started on Thursday. Wednesday afternoon, like the passport arrives at like noon, like a day late. And I'm on a plane like 2 hours later, go to ATL and fly up to Toronto. I'm at Toronto doing the event, and on the second day of the event, he calls me, hey, we just got acquired. Congratulations, you now work for EA. I'm like,
okay. What a company to acquire you.
So yeah, I'm like, well, I guess I work in the game industry for real now. I've been trying. Awesome.
Yeah, that is a wild.
That's a very long story that I wandered around a bit to answer your question about what that was and how I got in the game initially. So
that's awesome. Well, you took a sip. I'm gonna take a sip too. What are we drinking?
So I'll go ahead and share this story from the email thread. This is a funny story.
Go ahead.
So you send me an email and you're like, we're going to drink something. You pick the drink. We'll both have it. It's what your preferred, relaxing drink. And for something like this is the kind of thing where I'm reading the email. My first thought is I'm going to go to one of my good whiskeys, like sip on one of my good whiskeys. So I have a very eclectic whiskey collection, both in whiskey quality and also just like bottles. For example, I have the Blade Runner 2049 Johnny Walker, square bottle. I have. Do you remember Kingsman Golden Circle?
Yeah.
Remember Statesman?
Yeah.
So my brother-in-law is works in marketing and comms for. He changed jobs recently, but up until a year ago, worked in marketing and comms for Old Forester.
Really?
Their company, their parent company, which is like Brown Williamson, I think. And they partnered with the movie studio for promotion at the launch. They made bottles of whiskey. It was a special blend of Old Forester just for
That's
this purpose,
crazy.
in bottles that were Statesman branded. Had Old Forester real small at the bottom. Everything is Statesman's branded, and the label on the neck had a gold emboss of the Kingsman Golden Circle logo on it. So I had a couple bottles of those. It's actually really good.
That's
But
awesome.
my thought was, okay, this is gonna be a good thing. Let's go to one of my good Japanese whiskeys, because I have a lot of Japanese whiskeys. Because I believe we talked about this previously. You know, my partner moved to Japan in 2017. We have a home in Tokyo, and I go see her every 2 months because it's easy for me to travel, work remote, not so much for her. So I just go over there. And I've picked up a Japanese whiskey habit from drinking whiskey over there. And I have a lot of Japanese whiskeys. And my immediate thought was, okay, this is going to be a chill, good, like sipping whiskey kind of night. I'm going to break out my special use only 40th birthday present I was given from someone of a bottle of Yamazaki 25, which I was like, I'll do that. And then I get to the end of the email where you're like, let me know what we're going to be drinking so I can get some for myself. And I'm buying you the drink, so I'll Venmo you, you know. I'm like, ooh, I'm not having you buy me a glass of a $5,000 bottle of whiskey. So plan B. So plan B is game industry events. I go to millions of them. Problem with game industry mixers is there's a lot of drinking going on, and I am getting too old for that shit, and I like to have my wits about me. So my go-to is gin and tonics, because I can have a gin and tonic, and then I can go back to the bartender and have him keep adding more tonic water to my glass. And I'll have a gin and tonic to start the night, and I'll have tonic water for like the next 2 hours. And at 2.5 hours, I'll have another gin and tonic, and I'll have tonic water the rest of the night. So it's a great way to like maintain and not get drunk, but you're still drinking socially, and it looks like you're drinking to everyone. And people don't try to buy you a drink because you have what looks like a drink in your hand constantly, and so they're not going to try to buy you one.
Power
and
play.
So my go-to is gin and tonics, and for the longest time, I was all about just getting nothing too fancy. I had a couple, like, Sapphire was a thing. I loved Hendrix. I especially love Hendrix and tonic the right way, which is with cucumber and not lime. I love cucumber and water, so good. But that was my go-to thing. And then recently, on a whim, as a meme, I was like, oh, the meme value of this is too good. Let's check out Ryan Reynolds' supposed amazing gin. And holy crap, it's a good gin. It's a really good gin.
This is my first time having it. And I got the big bottle.
Yeah, I have 2 of those bottles in my bar. One's got about that much left in it that I almost killed off making this. And I got a fresh bottle ready to go when that one runs out. I have the same thing, Fever Tree, because Schweppes tonic water. Look, if you're having a college house party and you've got to put tonic water in like 50 cups and not spend a lot of money, get Schweppes. But if you're making a good cocktail, you want like a Fever Tree or some other kind of like actual like quality tonic.
Yeah. So all that gaming industry stuff with EA, and then you moved. Well, we met around that time. And I can't exactly remember how we came across each other, but that's why I'm wearing this shirt in honor of us meeting in Guild Wars 2.
It was either PAX, or was it anything related to PMS and H2O, or was it PAX?
Oh no, we met in game. I don't somehow. I think I recruited you to the guild somehow, and because you were in the Bros Before Pros guild that I ran for like 2 years.
That's what it was. Yep.
I wish it was PAX. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But yeah, what good times, simple times back then. At least for me, that was college days. But you went from EA and then you moved to Riot after that, right?
Yeah, not directly.
Well, you did Honored in between. Ish.
Yeah, not directly that either. So,
okay,
let's talk about EA for a second.
Go for it. I can't wait to hear this.
EA has one of 2 experiences, or both experiences. You either work for an amazing game studio working on really great stuff, or you work for a soulless corporation that treats humans as capital items. I had the fortune of doing both. I don't dislike EA as a company overall, but I worked for it at a time where it had kind of lost its way. Whole arguments and debates and podcasts can be had about whether or not EA has got shit together now again or not. But there's definitely a time from 2009 to 12 where it was in a weird spot. You can thank John Riccatello for that one. But when you're there in that time frame and you're on the corporate side of things, the longer you're at EA, the more managers and job titles you had. I was at EA proper for 5.5, 6 years, and I had 9 job titles and 11 managers. And I was actually laid off 3 times during that time frame.
What?
2 of the times I was laid off. One time I was laid off. They already had a job offer for me drafted up, ready to go before I signed the severance paperwork. And the 24 hours after I signed the severance paperwork, they called me with the job offer on a different team. The second time I was laid off and I was basically told, hey, we're shutting this team down. Everyone's being moved around elsewhere. But, you know, we don't want to lose you. It's just we can't rehome you instantly. Email this person in 2 weeks. So I did. And then in 2 weeks, I emailed them. And about 2 days later, they emailed me back with 3 job descriptions. And we're like, all 3 of these managers know who you are, know about you. They've seen your background. Pick one and we'll do an interview with them. And I picked one and got that job.
What is that in, though?
Unfortunately, that's what EA was like.
What were those job titles that you were doing? What were those job titles?
So when I started, remember I was at PlayLink. I was head of operations and IT. At the same time they acquired us, they acquired a company called Rupture. Rupture was created by Sean Fanning, who you may know as Napster fame.
Oh boy, okay.
And they merged our 2 orgs together. And I became the head of operations for that whole org. And I worked for Sean for a while. Actually, a really cool guy. Very different. No, he's a cool guy. He is the epitome of the slightly the nerdy tech whiz who doesn't want to run a company and is quickly trying to find other people to run it for him so he can do the thing he does well, because he's self-aware of the fact he's not good at running an entire org. Same thing with my current CEO, which we'll get to later. Spoiler alert, I currently work for the guy who created BitTorrent. So
Napster, that's a throwback, dude.
I work for 2 different pirates, actually 3 when you count my other guy I work for currently. We'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, so they merged our orgs together, and I was doing that. Then that org didn't really do so great. And before it wasn't doing great, I worked for, I was in charge of like DevOps stuff, release stuff. And the head of engineering didn't like the fact that like he couldn't just YOLO stuff into production without me like signing off and approving it. And I would gatekeep a lot of their releases because they weren't tested. He hated this. And we were in sink or swim mode. It was very much a, if this team exists in a few months from now, it's on the backs of his team. So they gave him whatever he wanted. And he was demanding I report to him because he wanted to override me. And they capitulated. I was moved under him. And he, was unhappy with my work because I didn't like YOLOing live code to production. And we had a lot of friction, a lot of personality conflicts. Knowing what I know now better, now I know how I could have upward managed that and sort of Machiavellianed my way into a more graceful resolution. This was my first true corporate job for like a Fortune 100 company at the time, so I didn't know how that shit worked then. Am I allowed to cuss on here? Can I do that? So
you're all good, bro.
So it was. I didn't. I probably could handle that better knowing now what I didn't know like 15 years ago. So he arranged for me to be laid off, and that's the one where I was laid off, but they already had a job offer for me on a different team back at corporate because everyone involved, the executives above him, all knew that I was being used as a pawn and it wasn't fair to me. They had just relocated me to California. They just moved me to San Francisco to be on this team. They just promoted me. Like they knew it was not cool to just like let me go like 2 months later. And that this was a personality conflict, not a performance issue on my part. And so all things being equal, it wasn't a terrible outcome. And then I went to work for a team. At the time, there was a North American team and a European team that did the same job. And our job was certification and compliance globally for shipping games on platforms. So if you're shipping a game and you need Sony or Nintendo or Microsoft's sign off, or, in Europe, and those are the 2 governing bodies for basically console releases, you have to go through the certification process. It's not like QA. They don't care if you jump through a wall with your gun at a 45-degree angle, you clip through the wall by accident. They don't care. That's a quality issue. That's on you. What they care about is if you eject a disc while a cutscene's playing, it won't crash the console. If you unplug the networking cable while something's happening, you won't brick your console. You won't crash the console. It'll handle it gracefully. They care about that kind of stuff. They're called TCRs, and TCRs is on one, and CTRs is the other one. It's dumb. It's like test something. I can't remember now what they are, but they have the same acronyms with 2 letters switched between Microsoft and Sony. And to streamline this process, game teams have embedded parts of their QA team who do all this to make sure they're going to be as close as they can to a pass the first time they go in. Then there's a central org in North America and a central org in Europe that were responsible for taking all this in, bundling it all up, and doing a final check and then submitting it for approval. And then if it gets rejected, triaging the issue with the game team and getting it through what they need to do to get it through. So I was brought into that team as a lead to project manage it. My job was to own the PC space because there is no governing body for PC titles. It's not like Xbox and Sony and Nintendo. I was the first party. My job was to make sure that our own test cases we had were, if someone clicks the EULA in the game link, does it actually pull up a EULA? And is that the right EULA? And is it valid? Is it, if you eject the disc from remember DVD trays in PCs? If you eject the disc from the DVD tray while you're installing the game, the installer should crash and fail. You shouldn't blue screen Windows, like stuff like that. So I ran the team that did that for North America. That was the job they brought me in for. I was in charge of making sure every PC game shipped in North America from May 2009 to fall of 2010 was a game that, at least for the PC side of things, wasn't going to do things that were not acceptable and met all the legal requirements. And so I signed off all the games in North America on that. So I did that, a lot of fun, enjoyed it. Then they decided that having two teams, one in Europe, one in North America, wasn't a problem, or was a problem, wasn't necessary, and one team could do all the body of work for both North America and Europe. The question was where to put it. And that particular EA team, the team I was on, was at headquarters. EAers call it EA Woodward Shores, which is the second most expensive place to operate for EA for their staff. And the most expensive is their Vancouver studio because it's Vancouver. Vancouver's very expensive. The other team was in Madrid, which is one of the cheapest places they ever had an office at. And so they were like, well, we're going to just add 50% more people in Madrid and give them all the work.
Typical.
And so they laid everybody off. And they laid everybody off. They didn't lay me off. Me and one other guy had been added to that team within the last year. And I had just been laid off a year before. And I think there was a thing of us not pay this guy severance twice in one fiscal year. I'm pretty sure some bean counter somewhere said, let's not pay severance to one dude twice in one fiscal year. Can we please not do that? But because they were completely dissolving the team, they couldn't just keep me. So they moved me into a similar team doing the same role, but this time with the game studios directly. So rather than the game studios say, our QA is signed off on this, we're ready to submit, please give it a final check and submit it. We were the guys embedded with the game team doing that work with them in real time, saying, hey, this isn't behaving the way it should, get it fixed for the next build, not, you can't submit it, all these things are wrong. We were early in the process. So I was on that team again at Ears, and I was embedded. My portfolio of studios was multiple studios around Ears. So I was then embedded with Visceral, working on Dante's Inferno and Dead Space 2, and I was embedded with Sims 3, and I was embedded with other Maxis-related stuff and EA Partners titles, where I got to do things like Beatles Rock Band and Rock Band 3. So, nice. Yeah, that's what I did then. Did that job for a while. Then another round of layoffs came because this began the era in 2009, began the era of EA laying off 10% of the company every April like clockwork. And so round of layoffs came again, and that job was always awkward for me. I'm spilling all the tea because I don't think EA will ever hire me again. Not because I burned bridges and I went out the door. It's just they weren't interested in rehiring me for several years. And then I went to Riot, and then I left Riot, and now I've been an executive for the last two jobs. And like EA is not going to bring me in as an executive on any of the things they need executives for. That's what I mean by they're never going to hire me again. There isn't a job that I would do at EA that makes sense.
Yeah, you kind of put yourself in this position.
So I don't mind spilling a little bit of tea without being. I'm not going to be disrespectful and spiteful and secrets and stuff, or like speak ill of people. But the manager I was hired to do was one of the worst managers I've ever worked for. Second worst only to a future manager coming up in the EA story. He was one of those. We had an expression at the company called "failing upwards." You can do your job, but you just do your job well enough and not great, and you aren't exemplary. But most importantly, the spreadsheets that come in at the end of each month for your team are exactly what the higher ups want to see in those spreadsheets. Those columns are green and they have the numbers they want to see, and you hit it every time. So how bad you are at everything else doesn't matter. The thing was, he was very self-aware of his cushy position that he kind of like failed upwards and could just tread water and be okay as long as he didn't rock the boat and do things wrong. And that's fine. Every company has those. That's a thing. The problem was when they sent me to him, he didn't have a say in this. They were basically, hey, we're shutting down your team. We're moving you over here. The thing was, in the grand scale of how EA operates, I was effectively functionally 2 positions higher than him, and they moved me under him. And that never sat well with him. He didn't even have one-on-ones with me. I had one-on-ones with his director instead because he
Really?
wouldn't have one-on-ones with me. He just always he found excuses not to. And the director knew we weren't meeting, so the director met with me randomly instead, just to make sure someone was meeting with me. And it's funny, we ended up being like colleagues at Riot later. But yeah, so we did not get along. I was super hyper aware of the fact that he just didn't like me being on his team, and I tried to tread carefully around him. So when the next round of layoffs came, he was told he had to let 2 people go from his team. So he let go the lowest performing person, and he let go me. I once got an email from him. You need to rein it in a little bit on this, and this, on how you're doing things with the Visceral team and the Maxis team, because you are setting expectations for the other studios for our teams works with them that the other people on our team cannot meet and should not have to meet. So you need to help us manage our expectations better by kind of just pumping the brakes a little bit on your deliverables.
Wow.
So yeah, that was what that team experience was like. But during the 2 years I was on that team, I was fully embedded for like a year and a half with the Visceral guys. So I was a functionally part of their studio, sitting in their space at their studio in a different building. And that was a whole different, that was the experience of being on a game studio team. And it was phenomenal. The Visceral guys was an amazing team to work with. Many of the production staff who I spoke to daily and sat next to are still very good friends of mine. I talk to all the time. All of the production guys at Visceral were just amazing dudes who do amazing things. One of them is the head of creative for like Meta VR stuff now.
Really?
One of them is the head of visual design for Mandalorian and Ahsoka and a couple other Star Wars shows. Like he's the head of creative design for all things Lucas. Not like the guys who worked on that team were awesome. And the work we did was awesome. Like Dead Space 2 was the happiest of my time there, I think. And so there was good with the bad. And then so I get laid off. And then that's when like a month later they rehired me. And I went to EA Online. EA Online had taken the vestiges of what was Rupture and what was Playlink that they had acquired and had finally done what they were wanting to do with that. And that was make an online replacement client system that replaced what they kind of had that didn't have. And that was a month after I joined, launched as what we now know. Well, I guess it's gone now as of last year. Origin.
It's gone.
Yeah. Origin's rebranded. Now it's EA. It's like EA Play,
okay.
EA Downloader, or something like that. But yeah. So actually that, I just realized, move my head here. So there's a thing in the industry called tombstones. When a company's acquired and it ceases to exist because it's now been merged in, you do these little tombstones for everyone involved in the process. So that's Rupture. That's the acquisition of Rupture by EA. That cube under it with the blue thing, that's the SCI acquisition by EA. And then that Origin logo, that's actually commemorating the launch of Origin.
Oh, wow.
So, next to it there, too, that's a Dead Space Gold Master, Dead Space 2. So like the Gold Master sampled this of Dead Space 2 that Microsoft sends back and says, this is going to be what we make millions of copies of. Everything seems fine. Triple check it. You've got 1 week to say stop or we're making them. That's one of those for Dead Space.
That is awesome. Yeah. You got a lot of cool stuff back there. Lightsaber.
I do, actually. And this is part of it. There's a lot more on going that way too. It's a
virtual
ball
WoW
over
books
there.
Down the corner.
Yeah, all the WoW collector's editions.
Nice.
The prototype merch from League of Legends and Riot and stuff. There's a Ripper from
Gears of War. That's sick.
that right there, that is 5 1/4 floppy disk packaging from EA's second game ever made.
Really? Dude, that's wow. There's a lot of history right back there behind you.
Mm-hmm. Brutal Legend, Eddie Riggs statue. I worked on that as well.
Dude, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, I worked on Portal 2. There's a Portal gun over there.
All my guys at work love Portal. They're like, dude, that game is amazing. I haven't played it yet. I need to.
So yeah, so that was, and so I worked on Origin doing digital publishing stuff up until we left Steam about 9 months later. I was the guy that pushed all the games to Steam and set the unlock times and everything for publishing on Steam. Did the same thing then on Origin instead. And then the last EA job after that was developer relations. So you're an EA game studio and you're going to release a game. No need to reinvent the wheel. Matchmaking, leaderboard, online telemetry, multiplayer statistics, digital distribution, DRM, all that stuff. Don't reinvent the wheel. We had a centralized team through Origin that gave you an SDK that gave you everything you needed and none of the things you didn't want. So I was one of those guys. We were also called online producers. Same thing as the DevRel account manager. Our job was to basically come to a game team that we were assigned to. They were like, hey, this is Rock Band 3. They're making Rock Band 3. Give them what they need. And so I go and say, okay, what do you need? Okay, you need matchmaking, you need leaderboards, you need telemetry, analytics, you need DRM. You need multiplayer support. You don't need like a PvP thing for blah blah blah. You don't need dedicated servers. You don't need this. You don't need that. But you need that. You'll figure out what they need and make an a la carte list. Then go back to our engineers and say, okay, from our toolkit of things, make a bundle of just these things. And then we give them that SDK, and then I become their point of contact for support with that. They're like, oh, we're trying to do this, and we can't figure out how. I'm like, oh, if you do this, this, and this, and call these functions, you'll get that. Or, good question. I don't know if it does that. Let me talk to my engineers. I'll talk to engineers and figure out, what to do. Yeah. That was my last job. That's where I had the worst manager I ever had. He just didn't like me. He flat out didn't like me as a person. He would criticize me about the number of tweets I made during the day when I should have been working. If I ate lunch at my desk, Star Wars The Old Republic had just come out. I was one of the officers in the guild of EA Online employees who all played it together. Most of us who worked on it as the online component. And allow us to play at our lunch break. We'd sit at our desks and play at our lunch break. He would give me shit for playing at my lunch break because people don't know that you're on lunch. They just see you at your desk playing the game and think you're not working. So you shouldn't do that. You should, don't do that. I'm like, no, I got a plate of food in front of me, but whatever.
Yeah, what do you think?
This isn't an hourly job. Like, I'm a salaried employee. You want deliverables from me. I get them to you faster than you want them. And the game teams are giving me rave reviews for the support I'm giving them. Talk to me about whether or not I'm doing a good job on that, not what it looks like when you walk past my desk. Yeah. He'd give me printouts and be like, here's a tweet at like 9:15, here's a tweet at 9, here's a tweet at 8:45. Like, you should have been working there those times. And I'm like, I was on the shuttle bus from SF on the way into the office. I wasn't here. I wasn't working. Like, well, the shuttle bus sucks. You got a work laptop. You could have been working then. You shouldn't be tweeting. I'm just like, and then the last straw was he would criticize me for how long my bathroom breaks were, if I took too many, and how long they were.
Oh no, dude.
Yeah. And so finally, like, I got fed up with it, and he was just way too abrasive with me for like 4 or 5 days in a row. And even the VP that ran the whole floor for EA Online, their assistant was a really good friend of mine. And she was like, he's got it out for you, and there's a real problem. You're like, should I go to HR on your behalf? I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'm just going to leave. I don't care. She's like, what? I'm just going to leave. Like, I'll find another job. Like, I'm tired of it. Like, I've been janked around by this company for so long over the years, up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm going to go talk to one of the game studios. If that game studio doesn't have an opening for me to move their team full time, I'm just going to leave. And she's like, okay. And I went and talked to one of the game studios, and like, maybe we'll have something in like 2 months, 3 months, maybe. If we do, 100% you've got the job, but we might not. And I was like, okay. And then like the next week, he just pulled another stunt about my bath. That's when the bathroom break length thing came up. And I was like, I'm done with this. And so the next day I came in, I didn't lose my temper, but I lost my like patience. I'm like, fine, whatever. I went home for the day, made up my mind to resign, went in the next day and was like, hey, can we talk for a minute? He's like, yeah. And we walk into a conference room, and I said, so look, he goes, before we go any further, I think you should know today's your last day here.
Oh my God.
I'm like, excuse me? He's like, I don't know which we want to talk about, but I think it should get it out of the air. Like, today's your last day. And I was like, well, I was about to resign. He's like, well, you can't resign. You've been fired.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody hates EA.
I had lunch plans that day with the head of Mythic, the general manager of Mythic, who's a friend of mine, Paul Barnett. He runs most of Wargaming now. I text him, can't have lunch. I'm packing up my desk. I just got let go. He's like, what? So he comes to my desk and helps me pack my desk.
No way.
So this guy, the boss, is sitting here like, he's trying to figure out why the head GM of Mythic is helping me pack my desk. And he's texting the GM of Maxis comes over to join us, just chat with us while we're doing it. And then another text message goes out, and the VP who runs EA Partners comes over. And so the VP running EA Partners, the general manager of Mythic, and the general manager of Maxis are helping me pack my desk, carry my stuff downstairs, and the VP of EA Partners gives me a ride back home to the city. And he's just like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's like, how much did you have to dislike me as a person to not understand how good I was at my job and the kind of cultivation that I had created in the company that was providing a quality service for our team, for these orgs, to the point that like I had these kind of connections that like these guys cared about the work I was doing was so good for them, that like you just got rid of me because you didn't like me as a person for reasons I never understood. He got laid off 2 months later in April.
Good. I don't wish that on anybody, but good.
That was the time they laid me off the third time. And that's like an abusive relationship. You know,
Yeah.
You go back a fourth time, like what is, fool me once, shame on me kind of thing. They ring me up like 4 weeks later. Hey, we got a job we think you'd be perfect for. I'm like, thanks,
Oh
but
my
no thanks.
gosh.
In hindsight, that was a mistake, but also it wasn't.
Really?
It wasn't a mistake because of where my career went after that. It was a mistake because of where the next year went. This was April 2012. I was laid off on 4/20. I was let go the same day Adam Sessler was let go from G4. We actually, him and I and a bunch of mutual friends, drank our way all across SF that Saturday. We started at 24th Street, went 2 blocks, hit up a bar, had 1 drink. Walked 2 blocks, hit up a bar, had 1 drink. Went all the way down 24th to Valencia, all the way up Valencia to Zeitgeist, the beer garden downtown, and then close out the night there with like 30 of our friends commiserating together. So we do
How far
that,
is that?
and then down the length of 24th was about a mile and a half, 2 miles up Valencia. We started at 10 in the morning. We were done at like 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
We had like a beer every hour and a half. We paced ourselves, but we were not sober. That was back when I was younger. I was like, 32? I could drink that much and get away with it. I ended up, that began a time in the game industry where jobs were scarce. 2012 was not a great time to get jobs in gaming. And I actually didn't get a job until the start of 2013, and that wasn't a real job. A year later, San Francisco is an expensive place to live out of pocket. I cashed out my 401k, I cashed out all my savings.
Jeez.
My roommate was a bro and let me pay what I could pay. Him and my other roommate covered my rent when they needed to. We had a rent-controlled apartment in SF, which was really affordable, which helped. And I paid him back. I basically, 2 years later, when I got hired by Riot, I owed him basically half the rent for the last year and a half. I just paid him all that at once. But yeah, they helped me get by, and it was hard. That's why a lot of my friends, when I invite them to do stuff, my friends are like, oh, I can't afford to do that. So no, if I'm inviting you to go do this thing, just assume I'm paying for it. If it's something that's like I know is pricey for you, I'm inviting you to come hang out and have fun with us, because during those 2 years, my friends did the same thing for me. They'd be like, hey, we're all getting together. No one's seen you in 2 weeks. Come join us. I'm like, I've got $10 in my name until my next unemployment check comes in. I'm eating $1 menu at McDonald's. I can't come out tonight. And they're like, no, you don't get it. Show up. That's all you got to do. We got the rest. And then I would be social. That kept me alive. Yeah. So I did that for like a year, trying to get a job in gaming. It was just hard. I had a really unique skill set from EA that like certification and digital publishing was like every studio had like 2 guys who did that. You know what I mean? So I needed a studio that needed someone to do that. Who like they're 2 guys who've done it forever or were finally not available kind of thing. It wasn't an easy option. So a year in, I get an idea and I launch Honored. And I won't go terribly long into it, but Honored was the idea of gamification of rewards in games in a way that's now more common, but was not a thing then. The idea was we tapped into every online API, every platform, every system, and every achievement you did, every major accomplishment you did was fed into the system. There was an iconography of badges and rewards and stuff. And game studios could partner with us for real world rewards. The best analogy is if you play Destiny 2 right now, Bungie has the store with all the things you get. You finished a raid the first 2 weeks, you can buy a special pin, and it's never available again. You finish the raid in general during the season it's new, you get a different pin. You finish the raid during the first 48 hours challenge weeks, you get really nice jackets you can buy. You have to pay for them, but you get the ability to buy them. You otherwise can't buy them.
No way.
It was exactly that. Yeah. The problem was I don't have the business acumen to raise money. And we didn't want to be invested in by a true set of VCs who would like pivot the company if we didn't start making money by a certain time. We wanted to make this for this reason, by gamers, for gamers, not we'll pivot
just for money.
Stupid. Yeah. So we didn't want to take VC money. I had a hard time raising seed money. I sunk a lot of my own money into it. We did an Indiegogo that failed. And after about a year of working on it, it fizzled out. So now we're in a Christmas of season of 2012 into 2013. First week of January 2013, we're thinking to ourselves, what to shut this down. It's not working out. The co-founders and I are kind of having a fallout over how we're going to take things. And Riot hits me up. They headhunt me. I'd applied twice and interviewed twice before the last year in 2012, and it didn't go anywhere. Or sorry, once in 2012, once in 2013. Neither went past the first phone screen. And now the recruiter's calling me saying, hey, how soon can you do an interview? So I do an interview with the guy. who would be reporting to me, who actually works with me now at my current job. I hired him at my current job. He's our VP of corporate communications, but he does an interview with me. He's like, yeah, he's fucking great. We should talk to him. So then the manager interviewed me. 2 other team members interviewed me. They wanted me to run developer relations. They wanted me to run the team that was going to build the Riot API, make the API available to the world, to build stuff on top of League of Legends data, like op.gg and different stats and things, sites, and run that team both publicly and internally, and be the public face for that part of the organization. And interviews went great. This is this story. So this is old school Riot. This is like 2013 when they're at their old office before the big campus they have built now. There was only like 300 employees. I go down the interview and Riot does panels. So I did an interview with 2 guys who'd be reporting to me together at the same time. I did an interview with my would-be manager. I did an interview with a guy who was senior, but he did not say his exact job title. None of the paperwork I had said their job titles. It just said their names and the teams. It just said publishing. Find out later he's the VP of publishing and like the number 3 guy at the company and one of the original like 10 employees. I was super candid with him. He's like, tell me about your time at EA. What did you learn about EA? What were your main takeaways? And I was like, there's a right way and a wrong way to manage people. I had some great managers and I had a lot of really bad managers. And the biggest takeaway I had was how not to manage people. And I explained to him all my management bullshit I went through at EA. And I was super freaking candid. Find out later it's the VP of publishing and like my future boss's boss, like the number 3 guy at the company. Turns out that won him over big time.
Really?
Yeah. He loved that about me, that I was so candid about that. He didn't realize I didn't know he was the VP of publishing, but he also knew he didn't wear it on his sleeve either. But, and then I had 2 more interviews after him. And the last guy was like, all right, so because you flew in for this, normally we do a thing called a roundup within a day or 2. And then we get back to you with kind of like the feedback from the roundup and what next steps are, if there are any. Because you flew in for this one, you're flying out tomorrow morning. And because 2 of the people involved in this process are going on vacation next week, we're going to try to button this up tonight. We're going to have the roundup now. Hang out here. Someone's going to be back to meet with you in about 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay. So I chill in the room for 45 minutes. About 55 minutes, this girl comes in to like have a meeting and she sits down thinking she's meeting with me and one other person. And then is like, you're not who I'm meeting with, are you? I'm like, no, I'm so-and-so. And she's like, she was a recruiter too. She sat next to the guy who was in charge of my recruitment process. Here's the thing. The recruiting coordinator who did all this, he was on his honeymoon. He wasn't there. So the guy who normally handholds you through the process wasn't there to handhold me through the process. So they were all collectively tag teaming me. And she's like, oh, can you hang on a minute? And she walked out. And I'm like, they forgot about me.
Oh no.
They did the roundup and they forgot about me. How bad did I bomb this? That like no one, like that was a gut punch. And then one of the 2 people she was meeting with was that VP. He could come back outside the room. He was like, oh, you're still here? He walks, he goes, you're still here? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, has no one come to speak to you? I was like, no, I've been here like alone for like an hour and a half now. And he's like, oh, can you give me 1 moment? And he walked away. I'm like, he comes back 15 minutes later. He's like, I'm not sure what happened or where the breakdown in communications were, but I'm going to walk you out and someone's going to follow up with you tomorrow. And I was like,
oh, geez.
Okay. Okay. So he walked me out and I walked back to the hotel I was staying at about 2 blocks away, dropped my stuff off. And I'm just like shaking. I'm just like, that must have been the worst interview I think I've ever done. I must have been like it. I thought it went great. I had a great rapport with everyone. The lunch with 2 of the guys was amazing. It was the best interview I've ever had in my 2 years of interviewing for industry jobs. I've never been so self-unaware of how bad I was doing. I think what did I do wrong? And I'm having like an out-of-body experience. And like I walked to Taco Bell a block away to clear my head, calling calling my now girlfriend who I just had met a few months before and was close to on the phone. Like, vented to her about what had happened and how upsetting it was. My dad calls me, hey, your interview should be done. How'd things go? I'm like, oh my God. And I tell him what happened. He's like, oh, well, just wait till they call you tomorrow. I'm like, Dad, I know you're trying to be a good dad, but Dad. And I get back to the hotel with my Taco Bell and I'm just like, and then my phone rings and I look down because I'd saved the number. It was my would-be manager, Ilya. And I'm like, this is Jay. He's like, Jay, Ilya. First things first, before I say anything else, I want to just clear the air. We want to make you an offer.
That's awesome.
Bear with me. There was a bit of a mix-up today. We had the roundup, and Chris, who was the guy who I was replacing doing this job, who was being promoted, he's like, Chris thought I was coming to pick you up and walk you out and tell you next steps. I thought Chris was doing that, and we both left the roundup, got in our cars, and went home.
Oh, no. Oh, what an experience, man! What a
I said, I can't talk to you
roller
about the
coaster,
offer. I don't
honestly.
know what it'll be. I don't know when it'll be, but we're going to make you an offer. Just give me like 2 days to get the information together. But we are making you an offer. I hope you're going to accept it. And I was like, what part of me is like, after 2 years, I got a job again, right? Two, holy, remember, this is 2013, right? Like, well, January 2014. Like, this is Riot when, like, if you worked in the game industry, everyone wanted to work at Riot.
Yeah.
It had no baggage yet. And, like, I was just like, holy shit, I have a job at Riot. I have a senior job at Riot. I have a job again. Like, oh my God. The imposter syndrome was real that first year. It was so real. But yeah, so then I was at Riot so that Honored, then Riot. And then I was at Riot for 2014, January 2014 to April 2018 is when I got poached.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was your exact title? Wasn't it like VP of Communications or something like that at Riot?
No, it was Director of Third Party Ecosystem. So it started off as Developer Relations Manager. But,
that's what it was. That's what I remember.
Yeah, Developer Relations Manager. But very quickly, I was like, DevRel is an all-encompassing thing here. And what we do, because no one else is doing it, I began picking up things that no one else. Because at the time when Riot was still like 300-400 people, we were getting ready a year and a half later to move into the new campus. As the company was evolving from 400 people when I joined to like 3,000 when I left, there was a lot of, if it ain't nailed down and it's not getting done right, it behooves you to take care of it the right way if you know how. So I picked up a lot of stuff that was related that ended up being all kinds of things third party. What it basically boiled down to was if it's external to the company and they interact with us in a meaningful way that impacts players of the game and it's not related to esports, I kind of claimed it. So my title evolved into third party ecosystem instead.
Gotcha.
So like relationships with Twitch, relationships with Curse, all that kind of stuff, merch stuff until they brought merch in house, lots of things like that. So did all that for like a little over 4 years. It was awesome. Loved it. Longest I'd ever worked at one place. Longest I'd ever done the same job at one place. I worked at EA longer, but changed jobs and orgs and came and went so many times it didn't really count.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that I was bored, but it was that I wasn't challenged anymore. And Riot's, they have a thing about not having VPs or directors unnecessarily. I think they have like 4 VPs. And so there was no career growth track for me there. And that's okay for a long time until like I had a team that was crushing it. I had built up a team like 5 dudes who just were on autopilot crushing it. Getting tons of accolades and recognitions for their work. One of them got the equivalent of the gold star, a trophy. Like they get a quarterly award where the like one employee a quarter gets a meritorious award for like being someone else in the company recognizes them, nominates them. A panel reviews all the nominations, decides on the one, goes to the manager and said, we want to give them this award. So you okay with that? Does that make sense to you? It's like, 2 of my employees got that in 1 year. Like
that's
awesome. A team of 5, 2 of my guys got that award. That's a big freaking thing.
Yeah.
And so I get to present 2 of them too, twice in 1 year. That felt really good to do. And my job was great. It's just I wasn't challenged anymore. I wasn't pushed anymore. I wasn't actively trying to leave Riot, but I was just, if something cool came along, I'm open. And we were working with the folks at GenVid on potentially doing some stuff with them. And it was the CEO and the COO who co-founded the company who came to meet with us. The company was just the 2 of them and the CTO. The CTO was in Montreal, where he had a team. He was former Ubisoft, and he had a team of like 6 engineers who were also all former Ubisoft. They'd all worked either Square Enix or Ubisoft together. The company was
Ubisoft
spun
Canada?
out.
They're in Canada,
yeah.
right?
They're in Montreal, yeah. And this company had been spun out into a private entity from Square Enix. They were part of an R&D team at Square Enix called Shinra Technologies. And Square decided when the CEO left that they worked for it directly. When he left, a new CEO came in. He was like, we're not going to keep doing this R&D thing. This is really cool. We don't care about it. We're going to shut it down. And they're like, can we take the rights to some of this stuff? And they kind of picked which things they could get the rights to keep. And they went and built their own company doing that. And so they had like 6 engineers, the CTO and the 2 CEO and COO. And I was talking to them regularly about maybe doing stuff with us, maybe not. Keep in touch with them. One day they were like, you should come work for us. And I was like, I'm good. Actually, doing what? And they had me come in to be their head of biz dev and strategic partnerships to just go to game studios and get them to use the GenVid technology, the GenVid SDK. That also turned into me then being the head of their U.S. office and building up. When I joined the company, I was employee number 10. When I left, we had like 112 employees, and like 80 of them were based out of the California office that I built myself and ran. It was a lot of fun. But same thing there. I loved what we were doing. I thought our technology was cutting edge. I was shifting less and less away from biz dev and more, which I was doing at Riot in there, and more into day-to-day logistical operations of running the company, which I really enjoy doing. But that also left me less tethered to the company, and just as long as I enjoyed my job. And I wasn't trying to leave, but we were 2021. The pandemic was like just beginning to see the light over the horizon. And it's like spring. You kind of have that urge to like, do something different, try something new, stretch your wings. You've been stuffed up for like a year and a half in quarantine. And I wasn't trying to leave, but I was interacting in Chia, which was not gaming related at all, as a community member doing stuff. And the COO, now CEO currently, was like, come work for me. And I was like, nah, I'm fine. I'm good. Well, doing what exactly? He's like, I got to build a whole company from scratch. Like, I've only got like, we've had for 4 years, we've had like 15 employees, and I got to have 100. And like, I need someone doing ecosystem, community, corporate comms, and build up the company with me. And I was like, I got golden handcuffs. I got equity. I got a lot of cool stuff I'm doing here. He was like, well, your salary will be this. And it was twice what they were paying me at GenVid.
Oh, wow.
And we'll give you a hiring bonus so you can keep your equity there. And I was like, sounds fun. I'm in. So, the old adage, you can leave gaming for tech and do the same job, doing the same thing for twice the pay and half the work, is totally true.
So do you feel like you're getting the same fulfillment?
I am, for different reasons. This is the hardest job I've ever had in my life. I'm VP of ecosystem operations. I have like a dozen plus people directly under me that I'm responsible for their careers. I am one of the 6 people who are the executives that we call the CFT, a cross-functional team that we run the company collectively with the CEO and the COO. So aside from my team's responsibilities, being responsible for my team, I'm responsible for the company. Like, I have to help make decisions about like things that like I have to think about. Okay, if I agree to this, that we should do this, or if I shoot this down, what does that mean for like the IPO we're working on? What does that mean for the business existing in a year and a half? What does that mean for whether or not I have to lay off guys in 6 months or can hire more people in 6 months? What does that mean for like our ethos, our vision, our morals, our ethics? Like, those are hard decisions and conversations to have with yourself on a regular basis. I'm still waiting for them to figure out that I'm not qualified to make those kind of decisions, but I've also been here now like 2.5 years, so I think that ship has sailed. They just decided to put up with me. I don't know. So it is the hardest job I've ever had. It's one of the most rewarding and fulfilling jobs I've ever had. It's the coolest job I've had. We're doing cool stuff. Look, I hate crypto.
Really?
Crypto is majority of it is Ponzi schemes and MLMs under new wrapper, and it's just pyramid schemes with a fresh coat of paint and bullshit and pump and dump hype, and crypto bros are some of the worst things in the world. And I'll probably get lambasted for saying those things. But I don't have a lot of faith in the majority of the crypto space. Blockchain technology has some really interesting applications when you remove all that bullshit from it. There's a lot of really cool potential when it's done right. The problem is it's bad for the environment. Proof of work is not a good thing. I don't care how many times people try to argue, no, that's the point. The 1 million people crunching away their computers is the security of the process. It's like, no, it's not. It's a power drain. So Bram Cohen, the creator of BitTorrent, came along one day and said, in 2018, he said, knowing what we know now, what would we have done differently if Bitcoin had been invented, knowing what we know now? And his first take was, it's got to be green. It's got to be environmentally safe compared to what we currently have with proof of work. And then he said, it needs to be more secure, like this, and this, in ways that I don't fully comprehend. That to solve that problem, he had to go invent new math first.
Invent new math.
Yeah,
okay.
he is famous for saying, if your business plan is step A, this, step B, this, step C, invent new math, step C, profit, there's a problem with your business plan. But that was his product vision. And you had to invent new math to make this work. But the thing about Chia is we're not a crypto company. We're a fintech company first. We're a blockchain company second. We have a cryptocurrency because you need to incentivize people who provide space to the network, but that's all it's for. Our focus, we're an enterprise software company. Our solution is if you are an enterprise company and you want to make some kind of technology that's powered by a blockchain that gets the benefits of a blockchain, the open ledger system, the distributed networking, the security of it, it's not belonging to one company for one company's internal use, but many people can use it for a collective reason that benefits you. But you want it to be environmentally friendly, that's where we come into play. Our whole premise is we use hard drive space, unprovisioned hard drive space. You've got a 20 terabyte external drive sitting on your computer for like backing up your photos. You're using what, a terabyte of it probably. 19 terabytes are empty. You fill it full of Chia plots. You have the program running in the background. Whenever you get a lookup request, your system checks, do I have a plot file with this hash signature in the millions of records in that plot file? No, I don't. Okay, never mind. When it says you do, you just go back to the network and say, yeah, I've got the signature you've asked for. I've got the winning ticket. And then the block is sent to you. You sign the block, you send it back, and you sit in idle the rest of the time. There's no CPU crunching. There's one computer crunching called the Time Lord. It's an open source software. Many people can run one. Only the fastest one's in charge. There's no incentive to run one. You don't get rewarded for it, so people don't run them unnecessarily. So there's not proof of work, but there is a single server. It makes each block, and then it just basically says, I built the block. I hashed the block. Here's the hash. What plot file out there on the internet has that hash already? Because when you make a plot file, your computer spends a few days filling the hard drive with random hashes. And then they just sit there.
Wow.
And when the network says, who's got this hash, whoever responds, the first one to respond, they sign the block. Everyone who has the hash who responds within 30 seconds, they all win, and you get Chia. And that's your incentive. You get Chia coins. And the whole point is it is a blockchain network that is environmentally sound and is enterprise grade. And it's not about pump and dumps. It's not about the coin price. The coin's not a security. We didn't do an ICO. We don't tell people if you invest in it, you'll make money. That's not the point. The point is the network exists so that international banks, or in our case, our first major public client, the Climate Data Trust, which is run by like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for trading carbon credits for the Paris Climate Agreement, that kind of stuff. Those is used as an open ledger system to track those things. And other people, banks and institutions and world governments who are like, oh yeah, we want to explore blockchain, but there's too much baggage with the environmental aspect. We can say, well, here's an alternative. Check it out. And they use us for that kind of stuff.
So
that interests me. And that's why I like doing that. I find it very interesting.
Definitely. That's awesome. So there's proof of work, proof of stake, and you guys are proof of
space and time.
That sounds awesome.
So it's a two-part. Proof of space is everyone's hard drive space they've allocated to the network. And when you start filling up that drive and you want more space on it for your own stuff, just delete some of your plot files. No big deal. The other big business thing is that data centers. Data centers have tons of unprovisioned hard drive space ready for customers. Now data centers can fill that hard drive space with plot files, and they can farm and provide network space. And then when they need the hard drive space, they just delete plot files and go use it for what they want to use it for. But yeah, proof of space and time. Space is the hard drive component. Time is that Time Lord component that makes each block and says, here's the next block. Yeah.
So when you're building this ecosystem, I mean, like everyone knows crypto, right? Everyone knows the meme coins. Everyone knows Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I don't think people really understand and comprehend like what the importance of the ecosystem, like of a layer one is. So what does that really do for Chia, and what does that look like for your day to day in building?
So for us, what's interesting about ours is two things. One, if you want to build technology on a blockchain, and you don't want the burden of people like, oh, you're using Ethereum, like that's so bad for the environment or stuff like that, or don't Ethereum contracts constantly get hacked and have problems? You can be like, no, we're not using Ethereum. So one, we have a network that's actually green and stable and secure. The second thing is we have what's called Chia Lisp. Bram didn't just create a layer one. Him and his colleagues together created, and we have a whole podcast series that he and I are doing. The second episode's due out this week, actually, I think.
Oh, nice.
He and others created a whole new programming language called Chia Lisp. It's a Lisp-like language. Ethereum has Solidity. We have Chia Lisp. It's a Lisp-like language for writing smart contract code on Chia. And it allows you to build stuff on Chia the same way you'd build on other networks. The difference being subjectively, our network's better, I think. And so you can do a lot of cool stuff with it that you could do elsewhere, but in my opinion, it's better to do it on Chia because you have a network that is not burning down rainforest while it's running. And there's other benefits too. We do some really cool stuff that no other layer one does. We have offer files. If you want to sell Chia, or you want to sell Bitcoin to me, we're not friends. We don't know each other. You want to sell Bitcoin to me, we're going to use an exchange. They act as a custodial third party who will make sure that one of us isn't screwing the other, and everything's handled through escrow through the exchange. Problem is the exchange takes a cut in fees, and the prices go up and down during this process, and one of us might not make as much as we would have otherwise. And then what if you leave your money in the exchange and don't take it out right away because you think, I'm going to use it to buy more stuff later, and then the exchange disappears overnight and gets rug pulled or gets hacked, you lose what you had in the exchange, you didn't take it out right away. Or because some exchanges won't let you take it out right away, they make you hold it there for 14 days where you can take it out, and then they get hacked during that time frame and you got unlucky. We have offer files baked into the protocol as part of the L1. I can create an unfinished offer. I can say, I will give 5 Chia to anyone who has 100 of this particular cat. Cats are our tokens, Chia asset tokens, cats. I want 100 of this token. I will give 5 Chia for it. Or I want this NFT. I will give 2 Chia for it. And I create the offer file, incomplete, and I toss it out to the internet. It goes on the chain as an incomplete offer file. The contract's there, incomplete. And it generates a QR code or a long string of text. Any user can take that QR code and scan it with their wallet or dump that hash of text into their wallet. They can put it into the offer system, and it pulls up the offer. It says, this is an incomplete offer. They're offering 5 Chia for 100 of this token. And you can say, I've got 100 of those tokens. 5 Chia sounds good to me. And you click accept. And then you send the offer back to the network, now completed and signed by you. And the network goes, oh, that offer from yesterday or 5 weeks ago or 2 years ago that was incomplete has now been completed. I'll finish the transaction. And it takes the 5 Chia from me and the 100 tokens from you and sends me 100 and sends 5 to you and finishes the transaction. No third party, no middleman, no escrow, no need for exchange, nothing.
Wow. That's incredible.
So that's a cool thing. That makes it neat and different.
Very revolutionary, honestly.
We also have a thing called clawbacks. I can send you 100 Chia. Say I'm buying a car from you. I'm going to send you 100 Chia. Usually you have that thing when you're sending a lot of money in crypto, you send that test transaction. I'm going to send you a few coins and make sure the wallet you gave me is the right wallet. And then you're like, yeah, I got that. Then you send the rest of it. I'm sending you 100 Chia for a car. I'm really worried. I know you sent me a picture of your QR code and I scanned it, but I'm really worried because if it goes to the wrong place, it's gone, I can make it a clawback transaction. I can say this has a 1 hour clawback and I send it to you. That doesn't mean I send it to you. You see I paid you 100 Chia. That's all you see. You accept it. You drive by, drop the car from my house, and I claim it. I claw it back an hour later. I get the money back and I laugh my way home. That's not what it means. You get a notification in your wallet. There's 100 Chia has been sent to you as a clawback transaction. In 1 hour, the timer will expire. Once that timer expires in 1 hour, you can claim it for yourself. Until that 1 hour timer expires, the person sending it can unwind this transaction, and you will know they unwound it. That's what it means. And so people don't have to do chest transactions anymore. It's not meant to be an escrow substitution because people can still screw people and other stuff can happen. What it's meant to simply be is peace of mind, or it can be baked into a programmatical use as part of a program or a script or a contract to do other more creative, complex things. And so it can do things, along those lines. So the idea is that I don't have to worry about, did I send 100 Chia to the right person? I send it, you tell me, yeah, I got the notification. I have a pending transaction once the timer expires. And I can be like, okay, went to the right place, not a problem. In an hour, claim it. Once you've claimed it, we'll finish the deal. You can do stuff like that. That's really cool. Again, doesn't require third-party tools, doesn't require an extra contract, doesn't require something that can be compromised. Baked in. Last third really cool thing we recently done. We have custody stuff built in. So you can create a wallet that's just tied to a single set of keys by default. Or you can create a wallet and say, let's pick a number 5. These 5 keys control this wallet. And we're going to configure it that 4 keys must be used to do anything with the wallet. So then what happens is we say we're going to send Chia to this person. The wallet's like, great, I need 4 confirmation signatures from the list of 5 that I've been told I can accept from. So 4 different people will have to then take that transaction, approve it, assign it, and their signatures come in. And once 4 have met the threshold, it goes, okay, cool, transaction sent. Also, you can do things like say, we had 5 people involved in this. One of them left the company. A new person's replaced them. 4 of us are going to say this 5th key is no longer valid and kick the key out of the circle. And now the 4 of us are going to agree this new 5th key can come in. It's now part of the trusted circle. Again, layer 1 built into the tech. You don't have to use a third-party wallet, third-party software, a hacky workaround. Because again, every time something is sitting on top of the chain, that's where all the news we hear about comes from, like compromises and problems and issues, is because there's a layer in between handling smart contract work that wasn't coded right and has an issue. So we don't have to worry about those things because we have all that cool stuff built in. So that's some of the cool things about Chia.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Interesting. And more importantly, these make it really interesting to enterprise use cases, our primary customers,
Oh, definitely.
If a world government is buying $1 million worth of carbon credits, they want to know they can unwind that transaction. If they do a bank transfer, they can get that money back if someone screws it up. So, and if they do an international wire, they can't. If they do a SWIFT, they can't. So we're actually better in regards to that. If they do a slow bank transfer, they can get it back if they screw up. If they do a normal bank transfer, they can't get it back. Here, they can do it lightning fast and get it back if they screw up. They like that. They like that a lot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What are the time of the transactions that you guys have right now?
What?
What are the time of the transactions? Like, how long are they taking?
Blocks, we artificially have the blocks limited to 50% capacity. So we have a mempool, but it's never very full. Transactions, unless you pay 0 transaction fees and at a time when the network is just really, really busy, then it might take a few minutes. Usually, though, your transactions are clearing within 3 or 4 blocks of when you submit them.
Nice.
We have one of the fastest TPSs. I think we're like, a lot of blocks say they have a really high TPS, but they actually don't. Like layer 1s, the TPSs are measured. The true TPS of layer 1s are like measured in single digits.
Okay.
Awesome. Ours is like, we're artificially limited like 49, I think, right now, TPS.
Okay. What are transaction fees like?
Say what?
For you guys? What are transaction fees for you guys like? It's just
depending
on the amount
right now.
Do what?
There's occasional fee pressure when like someone does an NFT mint, or if someone rolls out a new platform or tool that uses their own token and they're distributing them a lot, there might be fee pressure for like a day. And then the free pressure is equivalent to like a penny for every 10 transactions kind of thing. And that's just to make sure yours gets included in the next block, because you don't want to wait 5 or 6 blocks. But generally speaking, we don't really have true fees in the sense of fees right now because our TPS is so high and the wait times are not unreasonable for most people.
Are people building dApps off Chia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What does the future of Chia look like in like 5 years? Like, what's the goal, 5-year goal for you guys?
In 5 years, we're going to be a publicly traded company. We will have, I mean, that's not a guarantee, but everyone knows we've been very loud and proud about the fact we're in the process of trying to do an IPO right now. That's all I can say because of the process. But
yep.
I would like to think in 5 years at that point, we will have become public, because the process actually times out. Like we did the confidential draft a few months ago, there was a press release about that. I can say that much. When you do that confidential draft, there's a clock that starts ticking that I'm pretty sure is less than 5 years. So ideally, we'll be a public company in 5 years. We will have, I would like to think, a non-trivial number of major banks and NGOs and governmental organizations using us as an enterprise solution to a variety of needs. And the currently existing carbon transaction stuff that's happening with us will be much more pronounced and much more day-to-day.
Sweet.
And then there's a lot of, we've done some prototyping of what it would look like to try to do gaming solutions using Chia, because of some of the functionality that it has that other things don't provide. We're not trying to go full board like Web3 gaming stuff because everyone else is trying to do that. Yeah. And to be fair, It doesn't matter how good Ethereum is for Web3 gaming. It doesn't matter how good Chia is for Web3 gaming. It doesn't matter how good Solana is for Web3 gaming. If the game ideas that use blockchain aren't good, it doesn't matter.
That's the
And
foundation.
I will have a very long, drawn out argument with people that there's almost no gaming experiences out there using blockchain that actually matter. They are all gamification for the point of coin value. Like, they don't actually do anything meaningful. They don't provide a true, I have worked on Mass Effect. I have worked on Dead Space. I have worked on Star Wars: The Old Republic. I've worked on League of Legends, Valorant, Legends of Runeterra, Rock Band. I have worked on games that I will get into a knockdown drag argument with someone that are a piece of narrative art, that is an interactive experiential art. Nothing currently existing in blockchain gaming is a piece of art. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Not to say that it can't be and that people aren't working on it now that we don't know about, but the stuff that's out there, it just isn't. They're all vehicles towards profitability. And until someone makes a good quality game, it doesn't matter how good your stuff can support gaming is. But I would like to think that in 5 years, the things that make our chain special and the things that decouple it from the baggage of the crypto space that keep us separate from that will have opened up doors that the prototyping that we're encouraging people to do now using our space will have led to some actually interesting gaming integrations, where perhaps the blockchain integration is not front and foremost and the core functionality of why it does what it does and isn't the core game loop, but is a component of what makes the game experience compelling for users. I expect to see that in 5 years.
I like that. Yeah, I see a lot of the blockchain games, like copy paste of random like mobile games almost, just for getting a couple coins a day. That's going to be cents, right?
Yep.
It doesn't. Yep. I mean, there's really no point. If I'm going to play a game, I'm going to log into WoW, RuneScape, whatever, and play something that has a little bit of meat to it, foundation.
Right.
Did you ever expect to see yourself like in this position?
Oh.
I mean, how crazy is it looking back on everything?
I think so. The imposter syndrome was real the first year and a half at Riot, and it finally went away. Never really had imposter syndrome at GenVid. The imposter syndrome came back a little bit at Chia. At the beginning, not so much because the company was small and the company grew with me, so it wasn't too strong. But when I organized the all hands offsite last year for the entire company to get together for the first time, because the last time they did an all hands, there was like 20 employees and they all lived in the Bay Area except for 4. And that was before my time. And then in fall of 2022, I held an offsite for like 90 employees. A lot of people were meeting each other in person for the very first time. People were meeting people they worked with. Not many for the first time because sub teams had gotten together a lot. But there were a lot of people meeting for the very first time. It was a really important deal, and I think it was really good that we did it. And I'm getting a lot of questions like, when's the next one? I'm like, we're working on it. But last fall we did one, and like when I put that together, I organized bringing 80 people in from all around the world to one city. We actually did it here in Vegas. It wasn't me being selfish for them here. It's because if you need to fly 80 people from around the world to one place, one of the cheapest ways to do that is to fly them to Las Vegas. Flights to Las Vegas are not expensive. And really when you hire a professional event coordinator in Vegas to put together an event for you, they get amazing rates from the hotels. Like I got like 80 rooms at the MGM Grand for like $100 a night. Like it was,
that's a steal.
Yeah. So we rented out half of Hakkasan and it was like not expensive for dinner. Like that was a very affordable dinner. So, it made it easy. But yeah, so like I'm putting together this offsite for like the entire company. So a lot of people can meet each other for the first time after years of working together. New employees, people have been around since 2018 when Bram first started things with a very small company. We bring everyone together and I'm doing all this and I'm organizing the travel and I'm working with the party organizer and a planner and I'm picking what the events are going to be and I'm putting together team building exercises. I'm doing all of this. And there's like, our CFO is just like, okay, we talked about your budget last month, your budget's X. I'm like, yeah. He's like, stay within the budget. Don't need to talk to me. I'm like, okay. And our COO, now CEO, who's my boss, he's just like, how's it going? I'm like, I'm doing this. He's like, all right, cool. I'm like, any comments? He's like, no, just looking forward to being there. I'm like, okay. Like, there was no checking my work with anyone. There was no saying, hey, I'm going to spend, X amount on this, Y amount on that. I'm not going to do this because it just sounds too expensive to me. And like, I think people will love it, but not for what it's going to cost. It doesn't bring any value to our group. I am going to do this because it's kind of expensive, but this is the intrinsic value I believe it's going to bring in. So I'm going to go ahead and no one to have those conversations with. And no one wanted to have those conversations with me. Like the assumption was I knew what I was doing, and the things I didn't know how to do, I was competent enough to figure it out on my own. And while that's, I guess, true, that's where it really hit me. Like the imposter syndrome was really like, I'm on my own on this. Like I can go ask for help, and the CFO and the CEO will get involved, but like they don't expect that I need it, and they trust me. So okay, like that's where it really hit, and I'm just like, I never thought I'd be doing this kind of stuff. Going back to very early on, when I said put a pin in that, and we talked about, I said I'd never move to a city bigger than Chicago, and then I moved to Atlanta. When we're in Atlanta and we were working with EA, we built EA Atlanta. The first, I was the head of operations for EA in Atlanta, which is a very short-lived office studio, and I joked, people like, oh, we'd love to get transferred to corporate now. And I'm like, I'll never move to California. Definitely never go to California. And then when things went sideways because that guy I talked about, the best way I can describe it is they would have meetings about how things were going on our side internally in Atlanta. And then he would go into his office and the head of EA Online and her number 2, Sean, would ring him up and be like, how are things going? And it's like the scene from Star Wars where he's like, we're fine. We're all fine. How are you? And then they would hit me up right after and be like, what's really going on? And I tell them the truth because my loyalty was to the company, not him as a person, because he royally screwed me over in the acquisition. The day before we were acquired, they liquidated the company, bankrupted it on paper, stole the assets with a guarantee that the employees would be hired. So all the equity and shares I was given to come work for them were valueless. I got nothing for it. And then on paper, he said I was a QA tester, so that would look cheaper on paper to be hired. And I was hired in as a QA tester. And I had to fight with HR for months explaining to them, no, I'm an operations manager. I run all the IT, the infrastructure, the server system. And they were like, since when? I'm like, since like 3 years ago when this guy first hired me. And they were like, this is a problem. I'm like, yeah. So wow. My loyalty was to EA, not him. So wandered off there. But anyways, so I was like really in good with the head of online. And so when they shut that team down, they kept me and moved me to California. And I was like, I guess I'm going to California. And I got to SF and I fell in love with SF. I tell people today, San Francisco, like I'm from Louisville, but San Francisco is my adopted home. I don't even live there anymore, but it's my adopted home. It's not the same now as it was when I lived there. I moved there in 2008, which was like the prime time to move to SF. Like that was Twitter starting, Facebook becoming a thing. It was prime time to move to SF. It's different now than it was then. It's got its problems, and I go back and visit all the time, and I miss it every time I'm there. And by the time I leave, I'm kind of glad I don't live there anymore, but I also still miss it a little bit. But I've lived there and I've adopted SF. But then I was like, all right, never working for a startup ever again. Also, never were living in LA. I would go visit LA and I'd be like, oh my fucking God, never moving. I go to LA for E3 every year. I'm like, I'm never living here. I'll visit LA. I'll come to Disneyland, but I am never living here. Unless Riot were to hire me. And then in 2014, Riot tries to hire me. And I'm like, I guess I'm moving to LA, but still never working for a startup ever again. And then GenVid hired me and I went to go work for a startup. And yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, fine. But, I've kind of run out of, and then I was like, well, I'm never leaving California. This is my I love California. This is my home, never leaving. And then in 2020, I bought a house in Vegas because I wanted to own a home, and owning a home in Los Angeles, just, I tell people, if you can afford rent in LA, you can afford a mortgage in LA, but you know what you can't afford? The down payment. Because homes in LA are like $800K plus. And once you cross the $700K threshold, you can't get away with a 5% down mortgage. Like once you're over 700,000, the bank wants 20%. They demand 20% for a jumbo loan. They demand it. So getting a loan in California requires a 20% down payment, 20% on an $800,000 plus home. And most of the houses in Santa Monica where my apartment are like 1.1, 1.3, 2, that's as much as my house here is cost, right? That's a lot of money. No one's got that. So sure, you can afford rent, you can afford a mortgage, but you can't afford a down payment. And I wanted to own a home. It was 2020. It was June. We were in the middle of the pandemic. We were still in lockdown, just coming out of lockdown. And I'm like, mini midlife crisis mode, like 40th birthday, almost bought a Jaguar F-Type. Talked myself out of that and bought a house instead.
Oh, come on now.
Well, it was a good choice. The house is worth twice what it was when I paid for it in 2020. So
fair enough. Can't drive a house though.
Yeah, can't drive a house, but no, I bought a Tesla. I got a Tesla Model 3 Performance instead, which is way faster than a Jaguar F-Type. So
You like it?
yeah, I hate Elon Musk, and I don't like Tesla's brand choices in the last few years. Mine's a 2021, which is a great year for the car, and it's a performance Model 3. It's fast. It's fun to drive. But yeah, I had the mini midlife crisis, bought the house, and I was like, well, I guess I'm leaving California because I can afford this. But I still spent a lot of time in LA. I spent about 1 week every 3 weeks there, so a lot of my weekends are spent there. But yeah, so I've stopped saying I will never do this thing. I will never this. I will never that. I've stopped saying that.
That might have to be the title of this. Never say never. Just
Yeah.
I mean, Louisville, Kentucky,
Mhm.
to where you're at now. That is wild. Like if you could go back and tell
And there's been
yourself,
stops in there I didn't mention. I actually have over my bed in my bedroom, I have these framed prints that are like maybe 12 by 5. I don't know, like not 8.5 by 11. They're like maybe twice whatever 8.5 by 11 is. 15 by 20 or whatever. And they are black and white monochrome street map grids of everywhere I've lived, and they alternate. So one's black on white, white on black, black on white, white on black, and they alternate. And there's a grid of 8 over my bed, and it's Jasper, Indiana, the tiny ass small town in Dubois County where I'm from. Yes, anyone listening to this who speaks French is like, I'm pretty sure that word is Dubois. Yes, but when the
but not
French left
Indiana.
Indiana and the German settlers took it over, the Germans were very much like, French what? And so it's pronounced Dubois County, but Jasper, Indiana, the only town of note in Dubois County. Town right next to us is where they filmed League of Their Own, actually.
Oh wow.
So Jasper, Indiana is tiny ass town, like 30,000 people where I grew up. Lived there until I was 12. Then moved to Louisville, which is the next one. I was there from when I was like 13 until I was like 24. Did a year in Chicago, and then came back to Louisville, and then did 3 years in Atlanta, which up until I moved to LA, I still loved Atlanta. I don't dislike it anymore. It's just I've been now on the West Coast. I've been here for 15 years. I can't do East Coast again. Like I can't give up what's out here anymore, the weather, the environment. But I did love Atlanta a lot. If I had to move back east, somewhere back east, I would. And I had to. If I had 1 month, pack everything up, and live somewhere east of the Mississippi, Atlanta's where I would go.
Really?
Because I have a lot of friends still there. I have a lot of really great friends still there. Maybe Chicago. But yeah, so go back, Atlanta, and then Atlanta, from there San Francisco, and then San Francisco, LA. And then between the LA and the Vegas picture, I have a Tokyo because I don't live there, but my partner does. We lived together for several years, and then in January 2018, she moved over there. She's been there ever since. So that's like my second home. I go there every 2 or 3 months for a week or two. So
it's gotta be cool out there, right?
Yeah. So what?
It's gotta be pretty cool out there, I would imagine.
Yeah, I love it over there. I don't want to live there full time. It just doesn't fit my vibe. I love the country amazingly. I love everything about it over there. There's nothing I dislike except that I like space. I have a 2,000 square foot home with 3 bedrooms all to myself, and I use every last bit of it for different reasons. I have 3D printers in one room, and I have all sorts of stuff. And I like space. Space is not a thing over there. Like if V and I lived over there together alone, we'd have like a home that would be like 800 square feet, and that'd be normal.
Oh,
It'd be kind of big for us. If we didn't have kids, that'd be big for us, people who don't have kids. The idea being you spend all your time out. And I like spending all my time out when I lived in SF. I like spending all my time out before the pandemic. Post-pandemic, I've become a homebody. I like spending my time at home playing video games, and I like to have space when I'm doing it. I like space for my projects, like space for my stuff. I'm also like a 6 foot tall white dude, and just stand out in a crowd. You stand out in a crowd, you get noticed, and you should be not standing out in a crowd. You should be discreet and quiet and out of the way in a crowd. And I am not a discreet, quiet person. So trying to subconsciously keep myself reined in and calm and reserved and quiet constantly when out in public is a bit of it builds up over the week and a half, 2 weeks I'm there. And by the time it's time to go, I'm ready to get home for a little bit.
I can imagine.
Also, I've been struggling for 5 years. I cannot learn Japanese. I've been trying. I'm terrible at it. I struggle with it horribly. My brain is too old and set in its ways to learn a new language. And I get a little bit of social anxiety trying to navigate around without the ability to speak Japanese. And what makes it worse is everyone over there tries really, really hard. If you can't speak Japanese, they still try to help you. And a lot of people can speak English to some degree over there, especially because the school's over there. But still, I feel even worse because they're trying really hard to help me, and I'm just like, that's okay. I got this. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
What are you gaming right now?
Dabbling in Destiny 2 off and on a little bit. Always playing Final Fantasy 14. That's how the girlfriend and I like bond on the weekends. We play Final Fantasy 14 together with a lot of our mutual friends. So I play a lot of Final Fantasy 14, dabble in Destiny 2 off and on. The two big time sinks right now that I spent my entire long weekend. It's gonna be the same answer I'm sure you would get if you asked anyone this question this week, and that is Baldur's Gate 3, and it is Starfield.
How is Starfield? I just saw that on Steam, and I'm like, man, I kind of
Really
want to
good.
get that.
Really good. It is Fallout. It is everything good about Fallout and Skyrim, with a lot of takeaway lessons about how to fix things from those two, set in a sci-fi environment. It's great. I'm getting very burnt out of the Reddit arguments where people compare it to No Man's Sky and are arguing about it versus No Man's Sky, because No Man's Sky is a sandbox space sim, and Starfield is an RPG that happens to take place in space. They are not comparable. It's gotten to the point actually that the No Man's Sky Reddit today was actually banning posts about Starfield.
Really?
Like, stop talking about Starfield in here. No one cares about Starfield. It's a different game. No one cares if you think it's better or worse than this. They're not comparable. Stop talking about it in here. And it's true. They're not comparable. But if you like RPGs, if you like single player RPGs that happen to take place in space, that have all the best parts of Fallout and Skyrim and none of the bad parts, it's a really, really fun game. Yeah. Baldur's Gate.
That's amazing.
Now Baldur's Gate, that game is good. That is my game of the year right now. That game is good. What I love most about it is I challenge you to find a way to break yourself out of the box of the game and think that you're going to do something the game isn't ready to handle. Because that game is like a well-prepared DM.
That's awesome.
Case in point, I won't give spoilers, but there's a point in the game where you're like, here's 3 bad guys. You need to go eliminate them. They're all in this area. Go kill these 3 leaders. There's 3 collective triumvirate leaders who run this bad faction. Go kill them. And obviously it's not that simple. It's not, hey, new person, go kill. But like, part of the story that makes sense is they need you to go kill these people. And it's very much presented as this is a major plot point of this act. And you go in there, and 2 of them, your only real options to kill them. They'll become hostile when you walk in the room, even if for some reason they aren't, because you're using like a disguise self or something. All roads lead to hostilities. Third one, and you can do them in no particular order too. It's not like you get to them on the last. Third one, same concept, except that you can have a conversation with them if you really wanted to. If you don't come in and they weren't aware of the hostilities that took place elsewhere, you can initiate entering that room in a way that does not lead to combat. And that can lead to a conversation where if you can be like, bluff your way through some stuff and they fall for it and they give you an out, and the out requires being the most despicable, evil person you can be, and no one in your party will approve of it whatsoever, and they will all judge you for it. And I will judge you for it, for making the choice for what you will have to do. But they'll give you an out to do that. And you can be, okay, I do that. And then you can do that. And then they join your party temporarily. And then you can romance them.
Oh, no. So
this person that for 90% plus of the player base is just a boss that has a couple like bottom of the screen text and overheard VO and no actual cutscene interactions that you just kill and go about your day. And that's what you should be doing most of the time. And what 90% of people experience has hours of dialogue, just in case you happen to work around a bunch of different paths and decide to romance the evil homicidal maniac. So again, Baldur's Gate, I challenge you to find ways to do the unconceivable and throw the game a curveball, because you would be surprised what Larian is prepared for with you when they made this game.
Dude, I will say, you saying that's the game of the year, that holds a lot of weight with everything you've done. That holds a lot of weight, man.
Right now, Baldur's Gate 3 is my Barbie of the gaming world right now.
Fair enough. Okay. One last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do I want to word this? Other than never say never, what is probably like the biggest lesson you've learned through all of these changes and challenges, the layoffs, imposter syndrome, everything? Like, if you could sum it up into one lesson,
Hmm?
whatever, what would that
I
be?
don't know a fucking thing. 20-something me thought he knew everything. And things he didn't know was very quick to spout off bullshit to sound like he knew it. Had zero humility or humbleness, and an early 20-something me didn't know when he was in over his head, and had no self-awareness around when he wasn't actually performing to his capabilities. 40-something me knows that it doesn't matter how good I am at the current job I'm doing, how much my coworkers like me, how much praise I get from my CEO, how much other companies come and try to headhunt me. I've turned down like 5 job offers from Amazon game studios in like the last like year. None of that matters because I'm only as good as I know what I don't know. And there is a lot that I don't know that I don't know I don't know. And I have learned that the running joke at work I tell people is everyone thinks I do really good at my job because of Roy. Roy is my right hand. I have like several direct reports that run different teams. Roy is my director of operations for my team. He like I joke the only reason people think I'm good at my job is because of all the stuff he does for me. But it's 100% true because he and I have different backgrounds and different career trajectories and different passions. And as a result, he knows a plethora of things that I don't. And his passions are different from mine. So he has gone down rabbit holes that just have never interested me. And he has an inherent skill set that is more creative and artistic than mine ever could be. And as a result, all the things I'm incapable of doing, he catches downhill from me. And I rely heavily on that. And I'm very self aware of that. And that is true to everything. Like, yeah, I have learned in the last, I'd say since the day I joined Riot, I have learned that it's okay, all the things that I don't know and don't understand. And it's how I handle that lack of knowledge that matters, not what I know.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, the self-awareness is huge. The humility is huge, especially in a situation like with Roy, where a lot of people feel attacked if someone has a differing opinion or a different just mindset towards something or what have you. But it's so much more than that. There's so much wealth involved in that. Like you get so much more out of having two people like you're having right now than just two people that think the same way, same experience, same skills, everything. Like it's the full thing. It's a full
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. That's awesome. I'm glad you have that. A lot of people need that. I have that at work too. Me and my guy Ryan at work. I don't even really know what I am, but he's definitely the guy that's like the logical thinker. Hey, pull it together. Let's get it going. And I'm just the hype man, I guess. I don't know. But it is what it is. But dude, thank you so much for your time. I really
Sure.
appreciate it. I know you're a super busy guy, but where can people find you and connect with you, follow along with what you're doing and with Chia?
Easiest thing to find me. So I am colloquially known all across the internet as Sargonas. I've been known as Sargonas since the 90s when I first got my first AOL account at 15 years old. In fact, I own a trademark on it.
Really?
So yeah, so sargonas.com is like my website. But if you go to me.sargonas.com, SARGONAS, me.sargonas.com, it's a link to everything I have. It's kind of like those like what do you
The
see at
link tree
Linktree and
things?
stuff. It's a
Yeah.
self-hosted version. And it's every platform you can imagine that I exist on. I've got a link to it there. So you can find me everywhere. But Sargonas on Twitter, Sargonas on Instagram, Sargonas on Threads, Sargonas on GitHub, Sargonas on LinkedIn. You just, go to me.sargonas.com and you'll find a link to everything. Yeah, if you Google Sargonas, you're gonna find all the Google results are gonna basically be me and some drummer in a Norwegian metal band. So I have a very big internet footprint. Easy to find me.
Well, if you Google Chris Harms, you see the lead singer of Lord of the Lost. We look extremely different people, but yeah, good for that guy. He's got a big following. I got a lot to compete against. Well, thanks so much, Jay. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah. All right.